I'm here today with Mr. Alex Cadzow.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, that's okay.
And so first question, can you provide an overview of the ETSI guide and its primary objectives?
So the ETSI guide is implementing design practices to mitigate consumer IoT-enabled coercive control, and is meant to be an informative guide that recommends initial design practices to minimise the potential of coercive control through the use of consumer IoT-enabled devices. So it will provide examples and explanatory text for organisations involved in the development of and manufacturing of consumer IoT devices and their associated services. So the intent of the guide is to identify design practices to minimise potential misuse of consumer IoT devices and those services for coercive control, while not limiting the intended functionality of the device by the user. So the guide can be applied to multiple types of smart technologies, so things like smart TVs, like smart thermostat controls, that kind of thing, alarm systems, doorbells. It also will cover the surrounding ecosystem around those services and the user behaviour of IoT devices.
Okay. And why is this such an issue? These IoT devices susceptible to coercive control?
So the always on and always connected nature of the devices and the ease of being able to access them means, and the fact the vast number of these devices means the risk of people taking advantage of them to commit malicious acts is growing. And examples are, so like for the smart doorbell with the cameras and everything, so they're marketed as a way to like check who's actually at your front door and stuff, but then often they're the people who buy them and set them up, they're like the main account user. But in a household with shared people and everything, with one person being able to keep track of who's coming and going from the house, they can use that to basically control comes and goings of other people underneath them, so it creates a power imbalance. Mm-hmm. So the misuse of consumer IoT devices basically amplifies their own malicious behaviour.
Mm-hmm. And can you share some examples of design practices recommended in the ETSI guide to minimize this misuse?
So an example of like one of the design practices is taking steps to minimise risks that could further coercive control, is like limiting access to sensitive data and processes to prevent unauthorised access as well. But also awareness and education of the issues around coercive control which this guide aims to achieve, is a good first step to begin tackling this issue. But also covers advice such as including advice for like the users of the devices if they suspect something is being misused against them. Companies should have the resources and stuff like help services to help signpost those onto places where they can look for help, or like if they call out customer service, that their customer service staff have the knowledge and ability to provide the right advice. But also when it comes to customer service staff, companies need to be able to support those staff properly, so provide them with the right like things like therapy and stuff, because in some cases this could be quite traumatic, not just for the users but also for the staff, depending on the circumstances.
Mm-hmm. And how does the ETSI guide balance sort of minimizing the misuse versus not restricting legitimate users?
So what's provided in the guide is it's not meant to be prescriptive. So it is a balance of encouraging the designers to think about the different risks of how their devices could be misused, mm-hmm. and what steps could potentially take. But we don't want to try and limit the functionality of these devices, because obviously they've been very useful. So like things like the smart doorbells, again, being able to see that reassurance of who's at your front door. Also the things like, say, people who have like the porches, so they might leave like the porch door open but the main door to the house is still closed. Things like leaving passwords like that. We don't want to limit that kind of use, because And also for things like tracking device, like things like Apple AirTag or the tiles, their functional use, just being able to help find like lost stuff, like lost keys, is a good thing.
Yeah.
But that can be then misused. So the thing with like the Apple AirTags, when it came to like because the ubiquity of like Apple devices meant it came to the fore very quickly of people misusing them to track people.
Yeah.
And then Apple and like Google then pushing out updates to enable people to find and tell if they've got unwanted tracking devices on them. But then there's also limitations to that, because only the certain types of like more recent like smartphones could take advantage of those kinds of updates. So people left on older devices weren't able. So it's about trying to find that balance.
Yeah.
There's no real like one silver bullet type answer or piece of advice we can really give.
And how does the ETSI guide stay up to date with new emerging trends and new like threats as well?
So at the moment, the ETSI guide is still in process, it's in draft, with an aim to be published early next year, so March, April 2024. After that point, for it to stay updated, the plan at the moment is, as new research comes along, we can issue new work items which will bring new content and stuff. So we can do so once we've got the initial baseline version 1, we can then do like version 2 and stuff fairly simply like that.
And what role should the regulatory bodies and governments play in supporting the adoption of these design practices?
The simple thing is to actually encourage and make use of what the advice ETSI is actually putting out. And also when they issue their own guidance and stuff, say for like in the UK through NCSC, they make use of what we're saying instead of contradicting it or ignoring it. So it's about awareness of what's actually out there.
And how can manufacturers and developers stay informed about these updates, revisions?
Oh, that's simple. They've just got to actually take part and be ETSI. If they are ETSI members, they've got to regularly send delegates. They can't say, oh, we don't know this stuff is coming, if they don't participate in the process. They've got to be active, not just passive. That's basically it.
So to finish off, looking ahead, what do you envision as the future challenges and opportunities in addressing coercive control?
Hopefully this will serve as a good first step to reducing the risk of coercive control happening because of consumer IoT devices. And even as we're working through and like discussing like drafting the document, there's been things which are coming up saying, oh, with a bit more research and stuff, we should be able to bring into the document or use to have supporting related work items, like covering areas like such as e-health, covered also things like industrial IoT, so when IoT devices are used in like the workplace and stuff. Well, some of the design principles in this document could be applied to those kinds of areas. There are certain specific issues which related to those kinds of areas like e-health and medical and stuff and industrial IoT, which don't translate easily directly from like the consumer space. So there's potential to expand on this work in the future. It's just the willingness of companies to do the work and provide support to do this.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today.
That's okay, thank you.